I'm Jeff Matlow. Welcome to the best leadership podcast ever. Welcome back to the pod. So great to have you here. You know what? I say that every time, but I really mean it. I do. I'm actually recording this in the front seat of my car, a little crammed. I'm outside the Petco. Twiggy is getting a bath this morning. It's a spa day for Twiggy. And since my sister is currently sleeping in my recording studio, here I am in the front seat talking to you. Anyway, I want to tell you a story. And the story is about why nobody tells leaders the truth. I started thinking about this because of a client I have. I've been working with him for a while. And when I first started, the reason they brought me in is because, honestly, they were crushing it. Their revenue had doubled in only 2 years. They were expanding their offices. They were hiring faster than they could find people. And they were trying to celebrate their success whenever they had a moment to breathe. It's just that they didn't have many moments to breathe. Shortly after they passed $100 million in revenue, they even got a call from a national brand, an exciting brand, who really wanted to acquire them. The CEO, as you can imagine, was pretty happy. He went to bed every night with a smile on his face. He had a great company with a great team, or so he thought. Now, let me tell you about the CEO for a second. He's an energetic chap, to put it a little mildly. His personality is best compared to a Labrador puppy. He's bouncy, friendly, and kind of just wants to be liked, but all with an ADHD aesthetic. And as this acquisition deal moved forward, his energy level went from high to get this guy some Valium. At one point, he called an all-hands meeting to address the acquisition rumors with the rest of the staff. He told the team how amazing everything was, and he hyped the fact that they were entering into yet another exciting new phase of the company. And he went on for about 10 or 15 minutes talking about this, and then asked if anyone had questions. Nobody did. There was silence for a little bit. And so he reminded them about his open door policy, and he ended the meeting feeling pretty great about it all. He knew the company was headed in the right direction. He knew they were doing great, and he was convinced the employees understood and were happy. In reality, the company culture was terrible. Employees were furious, and the all-hands meeting actually made it worse. You see, the staff thought that the CEO was an uncaring, unauthentic buffoon who was ignoring the company's real problems, and the company's problems were definitely real. That's why I was brought in. You see, they were suffering from the types of operations and system issues that come with rapid growth. I see it all the time. They're not unique problems, but they're still problems. They can be resolved over time, but if there were dramatic change in the company, it would all detonate. And when I say dramatic change, I mean something like, say, an acquisition. Meanwhile, budgets were tightened, innovation was kind of disappearing, and the company vision had all but vanished. But the CEO saw everything from a completely different perspective, because from his point of view, everything was great. You see, budgets were tightened temporarily to increase the company's value for the acquisition. And innovation was slightly slowed down to prove that they could generate more revenue from existing products. And the vision had to be sidelined because the CEO was spending all his time on this acquisition. Everything the CEO did was geared towards growth, but it was a different type of growth than what the day-to-day workers were doing. He assumed everybody knew and understood his perspective, and they assumed the CEO understood their perspective. And as it turns out, they both were right in their beliefs, even though they had completely opposing views. And neither side had any idea the other saw things differently. Back in 1989, a researcher named Sidney Yoshida documented something that disrupts all of our assumptions about communication. What Sidney found out is that top managers are aware of 4% of company problems. Frontline employees, though, are aware of all of them, 100% of them. He called this the Iceberg of Ignorance. We often assume our superiors are aware of our problems, but they aren't. Still, that was 1989 when Sidney came up with that, and you'd think things have changed in 35 years, right? Wrong. In 2015, Thinkway Strategies did a survey, and it confirmed that this Iceberg of Ignorance gap still exists. In fact, what they found is that over 60% of executives say their organization has efficient and effective processes and they have minimal waste. But only about 25% of employees agree with them. In other words, 2/3 of leaders think a company is productive, but 3/4 of frontline employees disagree. That's a pretty hefty gap. But it gets worse. I conduct a lot of hugely insightful culture and leadership surveys for companies. I ask leaders to rate themselves on things like communication and transparency, and then I ask the teams to rate the leadership on the same things. Leaders consistently rate their positive behaviors 30 to 40% higher than their teams rate them. Every single time. Not only do leaders not know about most of the problems, they don't even know that they don't know. You think you're communicating well, you're not. You think your open door policy works, but nobody's walking in that door. And you think people feel safe speaking up, but you don't notice that nobody's talking. The iceberg isn't just big, the damn thing is practically invisible. Now, there are two reasons for this communication gap in companies. One is expected, one is a big problem. First is the structural gap. See, leaders focus on strategy and managers focus on operations. That's expected. That's the way the hierarchy goes. The higher you rise in an organization, the further you get from operational problems. That's not a bug. That's the job. A CEO can't fix the broken process of the day and still guide strategic direction. There's not enough sanity in the day to do all that. At the same time, a manager can't focus on long-term strategy while they're spending their time herding cats and putting out fires all day. Different roles require a different focus with different information. That's just the way it is. It's inevitable that company leaders won't know all the problems that employees do. That's accepted. That won't change. That's the structural gap. The perceptual gap is the part where you think you're doing things better than you actually are. There are two things that heavily influence this. The first is the mum effect, which I have to say is one of the best named effects this side of the Zygarnik effect, which I'll talk about at some other time. The mum effect. So it was created in 1970 by a couple of psychologists who found out that people are reluctant to tell others bad news because delivering bad news makes the messenger feel bad. Right. It has little to do with the recipient. It's about the messenger. Your team has problems, and they're hesitant to tell you, not because of how you'd react, but because how they will. They're protecting themselves from the discomfort of being the bearer of bad news. And that brings us to the leadership illusion. You think your open door policy works. You think your all hands Q&A creates transparency. You think asking anyone have questions at the end of a meeting means people feel safe speaking up. If you bothered to do a leadership and culture survey, you'd be surprised at how wrong you are. Because the way leaders perceive their behavior is usually much different from how it's perceived by others. That's the leadership illusion. When you say you have an open door policy, you're convincing yourself that people feel comfortable confiding in you. But from your team's perspective, you're always in closed door meetings, and when they do talk to you about an issue, you explain to them how they're wrong. Your self-perception is wrong, and everybody knows it, except you. Listen, the iceberg of ignorance isn't going away. You can't get rid of it. The structural gap will always exist because leaders and employees are inherently focused on different things that bring different awareness. But you can stop making it worse. The problem isn't that you don't know about all the problems. The problem is thinking you know more than you do. Your team isn't telling you the truth. You just think they are. And the gap between what you think is happening and what's actually happening is wider than the iceberg itself. So why don't we agree on this? You don't know everything happening in your company. Your team isn't going to tell you. And the gap between what you think is happening and what it actually is, that's not a communication problem. That's an iceberg, and you're the one ignoring it. If you're interested in understanding how to melt this iceberg, sign up for the Leadership Diagnostic Workshop. That's where you will reveal your patterns for free in one quick session. It'll blow your mind. Once you see it, you'll never be able to unsee it again. Thanks for showing up. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.